Hello everyone, my name is Azam Anagadze and today I am going to talk about web development. Welcome to the web development using jQuery, PHP and SQL. Topics that we discuss today are the front-end development, which includes an overview of JavaScript and jQuery. We will also talk about back-end development, namely the server-side scripting in PHP and how can we execute SQL commands. Finally, we will address some security issues with regard to Internet, namely the SQL injections and data encryption. So the first topic that we discuss today is front-end development. JavaScript is commonly used in front-end development. JavaScript makes a web page interactive with the users, and it dynamically changes the HTML or CSS content based on the user input. Therefore, JavaScript makes a website responsive to the user behavior. However, using raw JavaScript can be quite burdensome. Instead of implementing difficult functions on their own, programmers always use libraries, collections of predefined, already implemented functions to make programming easier and faster. The same is true for front-end development with JavaScript. jQuery is a JavaScript library with predefined functions that makes the manipulation of the web content easier. The general structure of jQuery is as follows. So we use specific selectors to select certain HTML tags and then call some functions on them. So now let's demonstrate how we can use jQuery using a very simple code. In order to be able to use jQuery, first of all we have to import it. In order to do so, we write the following commands. Note that we are indicating the source from where we want to import the library. So we are telling the web browser to go in the indicated location and fetch the corresponding library. Therefore, from now on, we will be able to use jQuery functions. The jQuery HTML function, for example, returns the HTML content of a particular tag. Now let's suppose that we want to find out the content of the p tag inside the HTML document. In order to do so, we first of all should assign a unique ID to this tag, because there may be many p tags inside the HTML document and we want to be able to select this particular tag. An ID can be any string of our choice, so let's assign it an ID of paragraph. And the JavaScript code goes between the script tags like this. Now we use the jQuery selector using the hashtag symbol and the ID dot, and then we call the function HTML. This function returns the HTML content of the p tag with an ID paragraph. Now in order to output the result, we use the function console log, which outputs the result in the console of the web browser. Now when we run this code in the web browser, we will see the result displayed in the console. So refresh the page and open the browser console. And we can see the hello world displayed here. So this is how the jQuery functions are used. jQuery also provides means for event handling. An event occurs when the visitor of the website performs a certain action. For example, clicks a button or writes something in the input field. jQuery event handlers are used to perform some action whenever such events occur. So the general structure of the event handlers are given below. Once again, we use the jQuery selectors with the $sign, but this time we call a function on with two parameters. The event name, a string indicating the name of the event, and the handler function that does the intended task after the event. Now let's go back to our previous code and write some event handlers. Let's suppose that we have some button on our web page. Again, assign a unique ID to this button tag. Let this ID be button. Click it. So we can see the button displayed on the web page. But whenever we click it, it doesn't do anything because we have not written the event handlers yet. Now let's do something whenever the user clicks the button. So let's write the event handlers. Again, we use the jQuery selectors, the hashtag, and the ID button. Now call the function on and pass the parameters. The first parameter is the name of the event, which is click in this case, and then pass the event handler function. Now let's do something whenever the user clicks the button. For example, let's append some text to this text paragraph. So we write the paragraph append. Append is a jQuery method that appends the HTML to some tag. So in this case, the HTML would be button clicked. Let's also change the CSS content of this tag by doing this. Again, select this tag and indicate the CSS properties. We want it to be of color red. So after the user clicks the button clicked, this text will be appended to the text paragraph, and the whole text will become red. Now let's run this code in the web browser and click this button, and as we can see the results. The text was appended in the end of the hello world, and the whole text became red. So now we clearly see that JavaScript makes a web page interactive with the users, and it dynamically changes the CSS or HTML content of the web page based on the user behavior. So let's discuss the backend development now. PHP is a popular server-side programming language. It interacts with the databases and dynamically generates the HTML content based on that data. MySQL databases are often used together with PHP. MySQL databases store data in tabular form in rows and columns. SQL, or structured query language, is a programming language that executes commands directly on a database. Most basic operations on a database are create, read, update, and delete. Together, we refer to these four basic operations as CRUD. In order to get started with the backend development, we need a web server. XAMPP is an open source free software package that contains everything we need to create a complete website platform. It contains HTTP server, MySQL database, and PHP interpreter. We can download XAMPP for free from the internet and use it to build our own web project. Using XAMPP, we will be able to run PHP code on a server and store and access data in a database. XAMPP is an open source software package so that it is absolutely free to download it from the web. So we just go to the website and download XAMPP package for Windows, Linux, Mac, or whatever operating system you are using. Now we should mention that I have already downloaded XAMPP package and I have created several web projects using XAMPP. One of the projects is called the Robinson, and I will be using this project for the rest of the presentation to demonstrate the backend development. Now, PHPMyAdmin is a software tool for manually administering databases. The four basic commands on a database are select, insert, update, and delete. Now let's discuss each of them in details using some simple table. Now let's go to our PHPMyAdmin page. As you can see, I have created a simple database containing just one table, users. There are no records in this table yet, so now let's add some users using the insert command. The syntax for the insert command is as follows. Insert into the table name, which is users in our case. Then we have to indicate the list of columns where we want to insert our data in. So name, email, and password. Finally, we have to indicate what values we want to insert in those columns. So let's add some user named Zaza. Let's also indicate the email and some password. Click Go to execute the SQL command, and we can see the result. The user has been successfully added to the table. Let's add another user with different values. Let's add some user John Smith with different password. Click Go, and the user has been added to the table. So we have successfully added 2 users into our table. Now let's demonstrate the select command. The select command is as follows. Select the list of columns that we want to select. Let's select just email column this time from the table name, and the condition. Let the condition be the name equals to Zaza. So we want to select email for all users who are named Zaza. Let's execute the command, and we can see the result. The email was fetched for the user named Zaza. Let's also discuss the update statement. Update the user's set. Now let's suppose that we want to set the name to George for some users. And we want to indicate the condition. So under what conditions we want to update the rows of the table. Let the condition be where ID is greater than 1. So for all users whose IDs are greater than 1, the name will be set to George. Let's execute the command and see the results. As you can see, the John was updated to George because the ID was 2, which is greater than 1. Finally, let's demonstrate the delete command. Delete from users where the condition. Let the condition be where password equals to password2, which matches this user. Execute this SQL command and see the result. So the user was successfully removed from the table. So these are the 4 basic operations on every database. Now let's suppose that we have a home page in our website like this. On this page we are displaying the personal data for this particular user. So we are displaying the name and email address. Of course, we cannot create HTML file for each individual user. It is impossible. There may be thousands or hundreds of thousands users in our database. Therefore, instead we write just one HTML file for each page. So for example, the file corresponding to this home page is given below. So we just write one HTML file and use the PHP to establish the connection with the database. Query the database for this particular user using the ID of the user, which is 1 in this case. Then fetch the results from the database and dynamically integrate this data into the HTML file. So the PHP code can be directly integrated into the HTML code using the PHP tags. So in this code, we are integrating the name and email of the user into the HTML. So all of this PHP code is executed on the web server. So the PHP code runs on the web server and it generates the HTML file with the corresponding data integrated within. And this generated HTML file is downloaded into the web browser. Therefore, PHP makes a web page dynamic based on the user data. Finally, we will address social, ethical, and legal implications of web development security issues. SQL injection is a code injection technique commonly used by attackers. It is implemented by inserting SQL characters or keywords into an SQL statement via unrestricted user input parameters to change the intended query's logic. For example, when we have a login page in our website, we should never check the user input like this. Select some fields from table users where name equals to the name entered by the user and password equals to the password entered by the user. If the user enters something like this, x quotation mark or 1 equals to 1, then we get a query like this. Select from users where name equals to some string and password equals to x or 1 equals to 1. Since 1 always equals to 1, the condition always holds. Therefore, the attacker is able to gain confidential information about every user. And we cannot allow that. Therefore, when we're designing the websites, we have to follow certain coding practices. In December of 2011, SANS Institute security experts reported a major SQL injection that affected 160 million websites. This number shows why cybersecurity is so important. Programmers are responsible for protecting against SQL injections. In order to protect the website from SQL injections, we have to follow some secure programming patterns. We should always check the user input before processing it. First, we should check the data type. For example, if the user input data is intended to be numerical, we should always reject user input that is string. For string inputs, on the other hand, we must always check for special characters, particularly the quotation marks, so that the user won't be able to escape our strings and alter the query's logic like in the previous case. Finally, to be safe, we should always store sensitive data in hashed format so that even if attacks occur, attackers would not be able to get information such as passwords or credit card numbers. Finally, let's say a few words about encryption and hashing. Encryption uses a special algorithm to encode a message so that only the senders and receivers can decrypt them. It is often used during the wars to send and receive sensitive data. However, encryption is a two-way function. With a proper key, encrypted message can be decrypted back to its original form. Therefore, hashing is used to store passwords instead. Hashing is a one-way function. It uses a too-complex algorithm so that once an information is converted into its hashed form, it cannot be converted back to the original. So whenever users register on a website, the password is stored in the hashed form. Whenever the users try to log in using the password, the input is once again hashed and compared to the hashed password that is already stored in the database. Since we only need to compare the password with the user input and we don't need to display it anywhere, using hashing to store passwords is the best practice. In that way, we make sure that even if someone gains temporary access to the database, he still would not be able to get user passwords or other sensitive information stored similarly. To summarize, jQuery is a very useful tool that makes client-side programming easier. PHP and SQL form the backbone or the backend of the website. However, unless database is protected, writing any software is meaningless. Cybersecurity is one of the most important aspects when designing websites. Server-side programmers should always follow the safe coding practices to protect the database from SQL injections. This is a list of references used in the presentation. All of these books and research papers are available on SDSU library, and you can go there and read more information about web and cybersecurity. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, you can find me at this email address and LinkedIn address. Thank you and goodbye.